If you as a writer don't want to see your antagonist go down, they're not a bad enough person. I've been thinking about the complication of all of the interesting villains that we've had in media recently. We have a lot of really lovely stories of heroes and villains, especially right now. Superheroes and supervillains are having their heyday again. But what we're also seeing is a rising trend in media of an increase in antagonists who are not villains. And this makes it kind of difficult to write good villains. And by good villains, I mean effective villains, right? Your villain should be a horrible person. You should want to see them be thwarted. I have been working on trying to wrap up the regulars of Amanda Lexi, and I'm gonna level with you guys. I love criminals in fiction. I feel like I need to specify that. I really, really love criminals in fiction. I want to see them get away with their hijinks. I think this is an impact of watching shows like White Collar and Leverage, and having that constantly be the thing that makes me think about how the story could go down, or how it might go down differently, or what if we were up against the best crew that's ever been put together, right? I want to see the best of the best succeed, especially when they're decent people. Maybe they steal, maybe they lie, but maybe they're doing that to help people. We call those anti-heroes. I call those anti-heroes. Anti-heroes are good people who do bad things for the right reasons because society requires it of them. Society is unfair or unjust or flawed in some way, shape, or form that leads them to believe that the only way to make a true difference, because the whole system is corrupt, is to work against the system, which oftentimes requires being a criminal, right? So I love a good anti-hero. I also love a good villain. Be warned, there will be spoilers for all of the things listed to the side over here. Lots of shows, lots of movies, etc. Because I can't talk about stories without talking about stories. So yeah, there's gonna be some spoilers. Sorry. And here's the thing, right? Like, I was rewatching Thor with my friend the other day, and Loki was actively the antagonist in that particular movie. He's actively doing horrible things and trying to kill his family. And the whole time, I was unapologetically still rooting for him. I was actively rooting for him, and it's because he was so justified, obviously misguided in his approach to how he dealt with things, but he was justified. He had been overlooked, he had been mistreated, he had been mocked and scorned, and he had all of the same upbringing. You know, it really comes to a head in his conversation with Odin, where he says, "I'm just another stolen relic for you to keep or use," right? That is such a justifiable reason for his actions that even in the midst of him being an active antagonist in a movie, I still have a hard time viewing him as the villain, because in my opinion, Odin is the true villain of Thor. Loki is just dealing with the aftermath, right? And we see this time and again where, yes, again, in the Avengers, Loki is the bad guy. He is actively raining war down. There's headcanons and theories that he had been tortured, that he had been brainwashed, that perhaps he was under the influence of some sort of impact as well. And I agree with those theories. I think he had been tortured. I think he was scared. I think he was trying to get back home the only way he knew how, and it was better to go back in handcuffs than to never go back at all. And it's Loki, so he's scheming. He's going to do what he has to do to get what he wants. And eventually that becomes a redeemable quality in him, right? The whole reason that he succeeds in his endeavors in the Loki TV show is because he is so mischievous. It becomes a strength. It is a strength. It's one of his best attributes. It's just that you have to direct it somewhere beneficial, right? So he's one of those villain, redeemable, gets a redemption arc kind of storylines. And I think that's an important factor here. Like I was saying, I have been trying to wrap up the regulars of Amanda Lexi. I've been working on this short story series on my blog for over 2 years now. I mean, I think I started that in 2022. And I love it, but I'm ready to write something else. And I don't want to do what so many people do on the internet, where it's like, okay, time to move on, and then they just like never end it. I want to give you guys some resolution there, but I'm also running into the problem of I've made a few promises in giving you all of these characters, and I want to make sure that I treat them all fairly and that I do the right things and I give you guys a satisfying ending, so it's taking longer than I wanted it to. Also, I'm fighting my own instincts. I want George to succeed. I do. I want him to get away with it, which tells me I did not make George a horrible enough person for me to want to see him thwarted. Because it's not that I vote for every villain all the time. I was watching a movie or a TV show with my mom. We started watching The Resident, and the way that I cheered when one of the most obnoxious people in that particular episode, it was like the episode Bad Guy, when that particular person got what was coming to her, I literally did a fist pump in my chair. I was like, yes, we got her. And I felt so vindicated. I felt so good about the fact that this person who was doing horrible things was going down. And so I think the important takeaway here is that if you don't want your villain to go down for their crimes, they're not doing horrible enough crimes. They're not being a horrible enough person, right? As much as we hate having somebody kick a puppy or hurt a dog, as much as we never want to see that, it definitely shows you the kind of person that they are. There's a reason that we all knew, and that so many people still believe, that Umbridge is worse than Voldemort. There's a reason for that. And figuring out what caused that emotional response is what makes somebody a more effective villain. So let's look into a few other villains, because I think that this is an important element for me as I'm trying to figure out how to end my short story series, and also for other writers as we're trying to figure out how we best tell stories that are necessary and required right now in today's age. Because like I said, we've seen a trend in large media of creating villains or antagonists, and there's a difference there. There's a difference between an antagonist and a villain, but we're creating bad guys who are either not actually a bad guy, so it's harder to root against them, or the conflict is coming from something that isn't a person. So let's dive into that a little bit more. Thunderbolts, I did a whole video about Thunderbolts. The antagonist in Thunderbolts is the Void. The villain in Thunderbolts is DeFontaine. She is the one who is pulling all of the strings. She is the one who is manipulating people. She's the one who is doing all of the horrible things that make you hate her in an interest to serve her own goals. The antagonist is the Void and depression and mental health issues specifically, but the villain is DeFontaine. This is an important distinction. DeFontaine does not seem like the kind of person who can be redeemed. The Void, on the other hand, just needed to have his emotional moment and to be understood and to not be alone. And that is a very important distinction. He is redeemable. He is a good person who just has had bad things happen to him, as opposed to somebody who is actively doing bad things that you don't like. Another great example of this, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Zuko. He is our antagonist for most of the show. He is pushing his way through everything. He is pursuing the Avatar. He's trying to restore his honor. He's trying to be able to go back home because he's been outcast. He's very justifiable in why he is doing all of the things that he is doing. he believes wholeheartedly that this is the only way for him to redeem himself. He's on a redemption path from the get-go. He's just trying to redeem himself. He just doesn't realize that restoring his honor in the society that is broken is not actually redemption. And when he figures that out, he's on a much better path for redemption. The villain is Fire Lord Ozai. He is a horrible person. He made his children into horrible people. He actively hurts people. He actively hurt his children. He is actively creating a militaristic society in which people are not actually very free. So we're seeing this antagonist versus villain over and over and over again. The villain is the worst guy you can think of, and he's doing all of the most horrible things you can ever imagine, and you want to see him stopped. That does not always have to be how you feel about your antagonist, but if you don't want to see the worst guy stopped, then your worst guy isn't bad enough. Another example. Let's look at the TV show Arrow, right? In Arrow, Oliver Queen is a pretty horrible person. Objectively, he is a pretty horrible person. He becomes a hero, but he lies, he steals, he hurts people, he trespasses, he breaks and enters, he kills people. He is a pretty horrible person. He's also our main character. He is an anti-hero. He's doing it because he thinks it's the only way to save the city, the only way to improve society, the only way to create a better place. He's trying to save the city that he lives in, and the only way he knows how is to go outside of the system because the system is broken. This makes him an anti-hero. The antagonist that he's up against for most of, we're going to look at the first season for this. The antagonist that he's up against is the police captain. It's the detective, the police force trying to stop him with the anti-vigilante unit. The whole goal of that unit is to put a stop to this masked murderer who's running around killing people that they don't have the evidence to convict, even though they know that they're bad people, right? But every time that Oliver Queen goes up against somebody, he is going up against the worst guy, right? It's a bad guy versus worst guy scenario. And that's a really compelling problem to have, where you have bad guys and you have worse guys, and the bad guys are doing what they do to stop the worst guys from doing something worse, right? That's my favorite scenario to put characters into. It's my favorite dynamic of everybody in the whole world is horrible, except for like maybe 3 people. They're all really bad, or they're going to be taken advantage of. So you can take advantage of the bad people first, which makes you the worst guy, but you're doing it to save people. You see this in Leverage all the time. There's bad guys and there's worse guys, and the bad guys have to be the best of the best so that they can stop the worst guys. And I love that trope. It's one of my favorite dynamics. And it's because we have somebody who is working outside of the system because the system is broken, it's not working, right? We have somebody who is inherently morally good, upholding a code of conduct that we can all agree with, for the most part. Obviously, murder is wrong, but it's easy to justify Oliver Queen killing people when the people that he's killing are hurting people, embezzling people, out for their own gain, and generally speaking, hurting society at large, whereas Oliver is only hurting them, right? It's easy to justify that kind of activity, even though it's still murder. It's still wrong. On the flip side of that, right, we get to season 6 of Arrow, and we get Ricardo Diaz, who is objectively the worst person, where even the other Earth's Black Canary, Black Siren, whatever you want to call her, when even the other version of our usually moral person, when Laurel Lance says this is the worst person I've ever seen, and she herself has killed countless people, we've got a really, 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 really bad guy, right? And part of how they establish this is that Ricardo Diaz sets somebody on fire over a childhood grudge. He actively kills, murders, manipulates, controls, coerces, even the people closest to him, right? And that's one of the most powerful ways to show how bad a person is, when they are actively hurting even the people that should trust them, even the people that they should maybe be able to be honest with. That's one of the best ways to make your villain the worst person possible, which is something that I'm going to have to figure out how to do in my own writing, because I do like my villains and I like redeemable people. I never want people to feel like they're too far gone or too far past redemption. On the flip side of that, though, we have to have these vindictive moments of, that person is horrible, they deserve to go down for what they did, and justice is only being served if they go down for what they've done. So anyway, it's an interesting thought that popped into my head as I was trying to figure out how to wrap up my own stuff, and also as I've been looking into more and more stories and getting inspiration wherever I can. Do you agree that if you don't want... Do you agree with what I'm saying about villains and antagonists? Do you agree with what I'm saying about anti-heroes and redemption arcs? What other examples can you think of? I'd love to see them down in the comments. So drop a like, drop a follow, subscribe, turn on that little notifications bell. I would love to hear what you think about this. And if you have other storylines that you want to see me kind of analyze and dive into, I would love to do that. So put those suggestions down below. And until next time, I will see you then. Happy reading, happy writing, happy movie watching, happy enjoying stories, because stories are part of what makes this world function in such a good way. Until next time, I'll see you then. Bye.